So it has come about that technocracy, in the full blaze of world publicity, will experience attempted exploitation by those with whom it has, and can have, nothing in common. The politicians and debt merchants of the day will be moved to employ technocracy as one of the cornerstones of a new political state. They may even go so far that, under the color of technocracy, an institutional fascism will be introduced as one of the dictatorial prerequisites of the incoming president. This and many other efforts will be made to utilize the work which technocracy so quietly initiated, but we, ourselves, will consistently maintain the position from which we started, that you cannot continue to do certain things on this continent. That people and times have changed, and that any decisive moves toward readjustment must be the responsibility of those who control the policies of this country. We have accomplished very little, but it has become clear that, if present conditions continue, we shall be forced to consider problems more grave than any with which this country has so far concerned itself. Yet America has just lately had a national election, and not a single outstanding figure in politics or finance has come forward with any proposal that has one iota of usefulness in dealing with these conditions and these problems. To an outside observer, America would appear to be a nation that is rapidly sinking to greater social instability and whose leaders lack intelligence to offer us more than soporifics and palliatives. The past 3 years have brought forth nothing genuinely relevant to the situation, and, if this barrenness persists for another 10 years, we are due for one of the gravest social readjustments that this country has ever experienced. James Watt produced his steam engine at about the time the Constitution of this country was drawn up. There is a profound significance in this fact. It meant that the epoch of social change, as above defined, opened with the commencement of the United States as an independent political unit. It meant that all the political instruments and economic theories carried over from an older time would become obsolescent on an area exceptionally favored by nature for the richest development of power, an area to be subsequently exploited to the full in that direction. A similar irony of events brings me to speak tonight in a hotel that yesterday was sold on the block under the hammer of the auctioneer, symbol enough of the financial obsolescence brought about by the very technological procedures misapplied to its design and construction. As the Irishman said, sure, and it was no good before it was built. Throughout the United States today we have an identical situation. Bear well in mind that under a price system monetary wealth is equivalent to the creation of debt. Physical wealth, on the other hand, is the conversion of available energy into use forms and services. Under a price system the process of being wealthy is the collection of debt claims, such claims being represented by the amount of money you possess. Physical wealth, on the other hand, is a degradation of converted energy into total uselessness, or complete consumption. You are not physically wealthy in the possession of debt claims against an automobile company, that is, through being able to buy its product. You are wealthy, in the physical sense, only when you are wearing a car out through use. Let us put this question of debt in another form. The population of this country during the past century has increased as the square of time, production as the cube, total debt is to the 4th power, and available energy as to the 8th power. You are putting your goods in hock faster than you make them. Note now this peculiarity about debt: the more use we make of it, the more we have. This is in complete violation of the basic laws of physics, which state that the more we use of physical things, the less we have of them. Today, with over $200 billion of total debt in this country, we find ourselves owing 4 times per capita as much as we did in 1895 and 16 times as much total, according to one of our economists. Do not forget that in 1893, 1907, and 1920 we had write-downs of this total debt, but its rate of growth is inclusive of all the write-downs, and the debt continues to mount, thus continually throwing the system out of balance. How then is it proposed to handle a continental setup wherein the production of physical wealth has passed from the direction of one process to that of another? The price system goes back to remote history. We have had variations of it for thousands of years. Russia today operates under a price system, even if it has eliminated private enterprise and commercial initiative. Its mechanics of exchange and its evaluation procedure are on the same basis as those of the United States. It has internal bonds, corporation charters, corporation stock. It pays wages and salaries and buys and sells on a commodity valuation basis. These things cannot exist without the price system, from which Russian communism believed it had escaped. Furthermore, Russia had to call upon the outside world for technical assistance in the introduction and use of new machinery, the foundation of the new social mechanism she wished to set up. Unfortunately, a great part of this machinery was sold to Russia by businessmen who were anxious to unload stocks of this equipment already obsolete. Tractors that were made to sell to the backlot farmer of 140 acres should never have been sold to the gigantic farms of this new state. But Russia is learning her lesson and doubtless by now is rectifying these errors. If you plot the growth of population on any given area subject to a high energy consumption, then you must also plot the growth of all energy-consuming devices on that area. For this reason the only distinction man possesses functionally, the one thing which differentiates him functionally from all other species, is his capacity to design and construct organic extensions, that is to say, energy-consuming devices independent of himself and capable of operating at high capacity with a minimum of human labor and attention. Under the compulsion of this technological development our modern world has reached a point where a laissez-faire economy can no longer be maintained. It is essential that we know the rate of growth each and every energy-consuming device upon any given continental area if we are to operate successfully the physical equipment of that area at an energy consumption of 150,000 kcal per capita per day. The more energy we consume per capita, the greater the need for a change in the methods of control, exactly as in the change from an ox cart to an express train. The social mechanism of today has advanced to an order of magnitude far beyond the log cabin stage of our ancestors. The methods of control must be adjusted thereto. Technocracy points out that these problems, if not solved, will lead to a situation of increasing gravity, possibly terminating in a secondary crisis. Attempts to balance our budget, to reduce expenditures on a downward curve, will simply mean less employment than before with a resulting decrease in purchasing power, and we will be compelled finally to such devices as debt moratoriums, debt holidays, inflation, and a free-for-all race as to who can create debt the fastest. How long this can go on we do not know. We did not create the situation. We are not responsible for it. Machinery and power procedures are not guilty of the present situation on this continent. Neither are the engineer, the technologist, and the scientist. What we do know is that the past 3 years have been more conducive to social thinking than any similar period in our history, for it would seem that only under such conditions do we achieve some lucid intervals in our way of social thought. We cannot push our industrial situation much beyond the point it has now reached. We have today a technological backlog overhanging this country which makes our material backlog resemble a backyard woodpile. Yet, thanks to the prevailing interference control of the price system and its corollary, debt creation, we can use only a small portion of that technological backlog. A new system will have to be put into effect in order that the things which science and technology have developed may come into full social usage. Such usage is not possible where you are looking for the earliest possible means of creating debt faster against others than they can create it against you, and it is just this procedure which is necessitated by the price system under which we operate our society. If you cannot maintain a preferential position in creating debt claims, then you do not stay in business. You go out of it. This is not the fault of the individual debt merchant or businessman. He is no more rapacious than any other individual or group in this country, but under the setup he is compelled to play the game that way. Granted a different setup, the rules of the game would be different. Technocracy is pointing out that social change will necessitate a new set of rules. Social change, in the sense of change in the rate of energy conversion, was not inaugurated until the advent of the scientists, the engineer, and the technologist. The meal which we have had here tonight and the microphone before which I am now speaking are symbolic of two entirely different processes, the meal of a process which has not appreciably changed in 7,000 years, and the microphone of one introduced by modern technology. Food is still served with man as a transport animal with antiquated combustion methods still used to cook it. Yet here before us is a delicate instrument through which the technologist puts me into direct communication with the people of this continent. There is no reason why the meal could have not been served without human aid, no technical reason that is. Financially, yes, it would not be sufficiently profitable to serve it so, and the capital investment would be too high. Given a continuance of the present rates of growth of energy consumption, we can see no hope of social advance under the price system and its democratic political sponsorship. These things contain nothing suitable for dealing with the problems in hand. They have no methodology except that of debt creation, and this is not sufficient for a high-energy civilization. Therefore, technocracy insists that unless a procedure is developed whereby we can accurately measure and know the rate of growth of all energy-consuming devices on this continent as a function of time, and unless all production and distribution sequences are operated on what is known as the balanced load, which means a minimum of deviation, then we shall rapidly approach the end of social stability and the beginning of chaos on this continent. I wish to note here a very interesting thing which has come out of the work and activities of technocracy, one of the strangest social and political realignments in history. For the first time we are witnessing an alignment on the basis of functional capacity, so that now we discover the liberal, that last resort of the incompetent and stupid, the debt merchant, and the communist, fighting together in defense of a system of advantage. We can but wish them well, hoping that the company of each is pleasing to the others, and we reiterate that, unless the physical factors of society on this continent are brought under control, and that very soon, these strangely assorted companion atoms will have little or no solace save the mud of the last ditch wherein they now struggle so valiantly. Technocracy has little more to say except that it proposes to carry on, hoping that in the near future it may be able to bring out its first definite reports on how this continent has functioned in the past century. It may be that social conditions are moving faster than we think, that they are even more serious than we have claimed. We do not know. Suffice it to say that if swiftly moving conditions do prevent our work from becoming known, they cannot prevent the work from continuing. That we have enemies and encounter hostility is clear enough, but we prefer to be known by the enemies we have made, for in their character and motives they exhibit an unparalleled functional incapacity. Thus it comes about that technocracy is not greatly concerned with replying to its critics. It does not have to. Conditions are determining the rate at which we are moving. Technocracy can afford to work and wait. No other organization on this continent can. If we are correct, then we have carved out for ourselves one of the biggest tasks in history, and we will die in harness. If we are wrong, then we have been merely human. We can leave it at that, in the full knowledge that conditions in the next few years will decide who is correct. Technocracy has no theory of the assumption of power. It is not concerned with going any particular place. It merely observes the present direction of social forces, striving to obtain a clear and unified picture of what is happening on this continent. What is to come is for the future to tell. We wish everybody a happy landing, and close with the affirmation that technocracy will stand its ground. For the rest, we will leave it to tomorrow. Footnote from the Greek, meaning a student of the theory of values. Axiology, the theory of values, their unique forms and interrelationships, as the true, the beautiful, the good, contrasted with the scientists,